Hello, and welcome to December's National Sewing Circle Live. My name is Lilia Khalif, and I am joined with Ashley Huff. Ashley, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Today, me and Ashley are going to be sewing a project from our Handmade from the Holidays series. We're making a dog bed today, but there are also 5 other projects, some pajama pants, I'm trying to think of what, a makeup case. I always blank what's on this list, but if you click the banner down below the chat, you can download all of the projects. They're all unlocked now, so you can start, if you haven't already, making your Christmas gifts. But today we're making a dog bed project. So Ashley, do you want to tell us a little bit about what this project entails?
Yes, so this is actually a really good, quick and easy project, something that you can make in a weekend. It's also a really good beginner project. If you're new to sewing and haven't done a whole lot, this is definitely something you can tackle. You just need a little bit of fabric, depending on the size of dog bed that you're going to make, to cover a pillow form, and then a little bit of fabric to make a tube that sort of makes the outside edge of the dog bed. So pillow form is your big one, and then either cotton or flannel fabric, whatever it is you want to make your dog bed out of, depending on what your dog likes to sleep on.
Yes, and Ashley mentioned a pillow form, but actually today I will be making the inner pillow with just a bunch of polyfill stuffing. Oh, upside down. Polyfill stuffing. I have some more that I'll be stuffing in the tubing as well. I think is an easier option for me. I'm a little bit, would you say that's an easier option for beginners? Because I can consider myself a beginner sewer, and this seemed a little easier to tackle than sewing for a pillow form.
So actually, they're both equally as easy, and I guess it kind of depends on what you want to use. So if you already have a pillow form and that's what you want to make, that's awesome. You can make that. I'll show how to make the cover part for if you're going to use a pillow form, but it's just equally as easy to take 2 squares or 2 rectangles of fabric and sew them right sides together, sort of make your own pillow and then stuff it. So they're both equally as easy. So I'll let you talk about what size you're going to cut yours for whatever size dog you're making yours for.
Yes.
And then I'll talk about what size I'm cutting mine.
Yes, I did choose the polyfill because I'm making this for a smaller dog, a puppy. So I have, let's see here, I think this is, let me measure it with this very large ruler. This is 18 inches, so I'm going to do 2 18-inch squares, and I'm going to stuff that with polyfill, but I got to trim up the edges here. And I have a question about this, Ashley. You know how fabric comes when you buy it off the bolt like I did this? We've got some fraying on the end of the flannel here. How far in do you recommend trimming off the little fringe here?
So I'm going to say that's personal preference, and I'm trying to see if mine has a little bit, and it has some. So this whole project, it was a very easy project. If you download it and watch the whole thing, it's actually constructed using 1/2-inch seam allowances because it makes the math really, really easy. So if you think about your 1/2-inch seam allowance and how much fray there is on here, your 1/2-inch seam allowance is going to be well down below that fray. So if you're short on fabric and you don't want to do any trimming, I honestly sometimes don't, because it's going to be in the seam allowance, it's going to be inside, you'll never see it.
Yeah.
But say this is another project and you have, your selvage edge and the fray, and that's like over 3/8 of an inch, then you might want to just trim it off, and you can really just trim, as close to that fray as you can get, just knowing that that'll be in your seam allowance. So if there's always like little cheats or little easy ways to maximize how much fabric you can use, and that's a good one.
All right. I also just want to let everybody know that you can start asking questions in the chat below. We'll be asking any questions you have either about this project or sewing in general. So be sure to start thinking up some questions, typing them up. And I do have one question in the chat already, Ashley. Teenagers to start sewing projects, or an easy way to start a project for teenagers. So if you want to clarify that question, if you want some project ideas or some tips of getting teenagers into sewing, let us know, and we can probably better answer that question. But do you have anything off the top of your head, Ashley?
Yeah, and I'm just going to say, in terms of project suggestions, just something that they're interested in. So, if you have a teenage girl who's interested in accessories or whatever they're wearing, you can maybe do a scarf project or an easy bag project, something that they can make pretty quickly, and so see the immediate results of why sewing is fun, and then be able to use and show off that project. Like, that really helps, I think, get people more interested in it as well. So that would be sort of some suggestions for projects. And then in terms of just getting them into sewing, really just a project that only requires straight stitching or simple stitching, which coincidentally is a project like we're doing right now with the dog bed. So this would be another good one too. So really just keeping it simple and making sure that it's relatable to them and fun and something that they want to do and then still be able to use too afterwards.
Yeah. I just have another little conversational question in here. As I trim, I'm choosing to trim a little bit of the fray off because I know it'll bother me. But did you take a home ec class in high school? How did you get into sewing, Ashley?
I did take a home ec class in high school, and it was almost kind of frustrating because I learned to sew when I was about like 6 or 7. My mom taught me when I was really, really little. And I remember I would like sit on her lap to sew. My sister and I would first get to help cut out things. We would get to help put pins in. And then I remember I was so little when I learned to sew that my mom had this like workout step-up box that we used to have to put the foot pedal onto because I wasn't tall enough to reach the pedal.
You were too short.
So by the time I got to my high school home ec class, it was a little frustrating because it was like, I did this when I was so little. But it definitely was, it was still fun. My grandma has sewed forever, and I started to sew in a home ec class, and I remember I was really, really bad at it at first. We made like a locker organizer and a pillowcase. The locker organizer is actually like a kind of difficult sewing project, I'd say, for like novice teenager sewers, and I did it wrong so many times that I had to rip my stitches out 4 times to redo the project and start it over because my teacher was very meticulous, but I persevered, and here I am today sewing a dog bed. That's my sewing story. All right, I've trimmed this up, Ashley. Where do I start from here? I guess mine is all in one big piece. I have to cut it into 2 squares. But when I begin sewing, I have a question about stuffing this pillow. So if I'm stuffing with the fiber fill, I'm gonna sew around the 3 main and then stuff it on the top and then sew the top up, or do you have a better recommendation for that? So that's a good way to do it. And actually, before you cut anything, just because unless you are meaning to cut it in, since you're going to be putting it right sides together and stitching anyway, you don't have to cut it apart.
True.
You might as well leave that edge and it can already be together. But so if you have your 2 pieces, so mine aren't the same size, which I'll show you that why in a minute, because that's how I'm doing mine. But I like to not have to, when I come back in to do the stitching, have to worry about a corner. So if I'm stitching the perimeter of something, I'm gonna start about a third of the way in. I'm gonna go down to the corner, come all the way around, do all of my corners, and then come in about a third again. And then that way I'm just leaving a third open along one side. So it doesn't really matter which side you do, but I like to stitch all 4 of my corners rather than having to turn that right side out and figure out the corner. So always stitch your corners.
All right, I have another question in the chat from Donna. Hello, Donna, thank you for joining us. And she asks, what is a good basic starter machine to buy?
So there are so many. So I have a hard time just saying like one specific brand or model. I absolutely love mine, but unfortunately it is not a model that they make anymore, but it is just a basic Brother machine. It's a very simple, just does straight stitches, does some other decorative stitches, but really any brand, so whether it's Brother, Singer, Pfaff, Viking, any brand has base models or basic models, and I would recommend just looking at those and starting there. So if you go to an actual machine dealer, or if your, say, local Joann Fabrics has a certified dealer within the store, which some of them do, they actually let you test out the machine. And so I would just go and test out a bunch of them and see, you know, which one can you sit down and right away, like it doesn't intimidate you. Them out before you pick one. I definitely think that's a good way to go.
Wow, I didn't know you could go in and test sewing machines. That's super handy. I'm using a Singer Quantum Stylist 9960, which I have never sewn on before, so be gentle with me as I sew with it. We actually had a little bit of, we couldn't get the presser foot to engage with us, so I'm using the start-stop button, which I've never done on a sewing machine before because I've sewn with my grandma's like old sewing machine from the 60s. So this is a new technique for me today. By the way, I'm just trimming. When I got this cut from Joann Fabric, they cut it kind of uneven because she was just going through quick with the scissors. So I'm just trimming off some of this little excess I have here because it bugs me when I sew with it. And I'm cutting towards me actually, which as I'm doing this, I realize is the exact wrong thing to do. They always advise you to cut away from yourself, but my fabric was uneven coming towards me, so that's why I started that way. All right, Ashley, do you have any tips about the dog bed? Any further instruction as I do this, or shall I go on assembling my square here?
Okay, you definitely go on assembling your square since you're doing the one where you're making your own pillow. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the first steps you're going to need to do if you are making the cover to cover your pillow form. But the one thing I will say, since you are going to be doing your stitching, when you are stitching your corners, do a diagonal stitch in the corner. So if you're not familiar with that, I'm going to hold up my square here so I can do a little visual.
Okay.
When you are lining up, say your presser foot along this edge and you're stitching, right, you're going to come up to here and you're going to stop so you can pivot and then go along the next side. What you want to do is you want to stop. You want to pivot rather than pivoting all the way 90, pivot 45. You're going to take one stitch, then pivot 45, and then continue on. And you want to do that anytime you're stitching together squares of fabric that's bulky, so like a flannel, if you're doing fleece, minky, something of that nature for your dog bed, always do that diagonal stitch in the corner. Otherwise, you're going to have just sort of this big jumble of fabric. So
is that
be sure to do your
just one diagonal stitch in there? That's what you recommend? One diagonal stitch? Sorry, I just wanted to be extra sure.
Yeah, yep. Okay. Just one. I mean, if you're using like fleece or it's like a really, really thick polar fleece or something, sometimes you can do 2 stitches, but really one is enough. So that's if you're doing making your own pillow. If you are making a pillow form, like I am here, or you're going to be using the pillow form and you're making the cover, the one thing that you need to do is you need to hem the short ends of the 2 rectangles. So if you've downloaded the video and you're going to watch the whole tutorial, you'll see that you have one square that is the front, and then you're going to have 2 rectangles that we're going to piece together to be the back. And along one of the long edges on those rectangles, you need to hem it. So you just want to double fold 1/4 or 1/2 inch to the wrong side. So there's one fold, and so the double fold is just you fold a second time. You can press it if you want, pin it if you want, but really just fold it and then stitch it. So I'm going to go ahead and get mine folded and pinned while you stitch your squares. So if you are stitching, we definitely want to see you do your diagonal stitches.
I am pinning mine right now just a little bit too for some extra security. And I have a question about pins, Ashley. Do you have a favorite pin, a preference in pin? I have 2 different kinds here. I have these little rounded ones that I think are plastic, and then I have these ones that look like a little sun that are a little longer, but they're a little flimsier. So do you have a pin preference? What's your recommendation?
I do for a lot of things. This is actually my pin cushion, so it's got a hodgepodge of a bunch of different ones. So I have really big, long ones here. I also have much smaller, finer silk pins here. And if I have my preference, I do like the silk pins. They're a lot sharper, so they pretty much go into anything very easily. They're also super, super fine. So if I forget to take a pin out and I sew over it, this bends like so easy. I'm not going to break a needle on one of these. This little guy is just going to bend. And then when I do that, then I can take them back out, straighten them, and use them again. So those are my all-time favorite.
Nice. Have you ever broken pins? I'm sure we all have. I've only done it once, and it was really traumatic, so now I'm very careful when I'm sewing with pins on.
Yes, I've definitely broken a couple pins, broken a couple needles, but I'm still here, so it's okay.
You're still here. All right, I'm using this new machine I was already poised, and there's a presser foot down here. I was ready to use it, but I have to use the button, so we're gonna see how it goes. I have it on pretty slow because I don't want it to erratically pull my fabric through here. But here we go. Maybe that's a little too slow. We'll speed it up a tiny bit. Too fast. We're just finding the just right.
All right, well, you do that. I'm gonna finish pinning, and then I placed my scissors just out of reach, so I'm going to sneak away and grab them while you sew.
You grab them.
Okay.
I'm doing this very gently with the button because I'm nervous about it, but when I have a presser foot, man, I lay the pedal to the metal and I go very quickly. But that's because you're controlling it. Here with one of the buttons, you have a little less control. Let us know if you have any questions in the chat. we're here to answer them. We've got plenty of time, whether it's about the dog bed or about sewing in general. And if you're looking to download the dog bed video tutorial, there's a link below the chat where you can download 5 other handmade for the holiday projects if you would like. So feel free to go check that out, ask us some questions. All right, I'm getting near the corner and I'm stopping. And I'm gonna wait for Ashley to return from getting her scissors to make sure I do this diagonal cut right. Okay, just in time. All right, I'm at the end, so I wanna pivot towards
45.
the center here.
Yep.
And
So don't go all the way yet. So only go 45 degrees. So you just went 90, right? So take it back halfway.
take it back halfway. So I'm coming towards, this is diagonally, I think, towards myself here with coming straight in. I wonder if we can zoom in on this more. Can you see what I'm doing, Ashley?
You're right. I bet you my angle. You're right. Okay, so take 1 stitch.
Okay, I'm gonna do it slowest possible. Okay, got our stitch in there. And now should I back
And now
stitch?
you can go and continue down the next side. You don't need a back stitch. Nope, just continue down the next side.
Now I pivot and I go the next side.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We're still waiting for some more questions in the chat. So if you got some great tips for us, Ashley, or anything you want to mention about this project, feel free.
Absolutely. So a couple tips when you are sewing, because you're using flannel fabric as well, and I'm using flannel fabric. It is really, really easy to work with, but it is a 100% cotton fabric. But unlike cotton, so I have an example. Here's cotton. Cotton is very, very sturdy on all of the straight grains. It doesn't really stretch. There is no give until you get onto the bias. But when you're working with flannel, it definitely is a little bit more flexible. So this is a straight grain, and you can still see that I can pull it and it stretches a little bit. This way, it doesn't stretch as much. And then on the bias, I mean, it is really, really stretchy, which is handy if you want your project to stretch. If you don't want your project to stretch, while you're sewing, just make sure that you're allowing your machine to do the work and you're not, pulling it from behind, or you're not trying to push the fabric through your machine. Just let your machine feed dogs, pull it. And then that way, once you stitch it, you're gonna still have that nice straight, project that you want, and it's not going to be, bowed or distorted in any way. So don't force your fabric.
We have a question from Anya in the chat here who just joined and asked, what are you making? And today we are making a dog bed pattern from our Handmade from the Holidays series. So if you want to download the tutorial, there's a link below this chat in the banner, and we'll be making part of the project today. I have another question for you, Ashley, because they asked me this at Joanne, and I did, but she asked if I would be pre-washing my fabric, and I know this is a point of contention for a variety of people, but for sure I know flannel shrinks. What's your thoughts on pre-washing fabric and different kinds of fabric that need pre-washing?
Yes, so that's definitely one of those things where you either always pre-wash everything or you don't pre-wash anything. I'm kind of on the fence, and I do sometimes and I don't sometimes. A quilt or making a cotton shirt or something, probably I'm not going to worry about pre-washing if I'm buying high quality cotton fabric, because it's probably not going to shrink as much. Flannel though does tend to shrink a little bit more, so I probably would pre-wash my flannel on something if I'm worried about size. So if I'm going to make a flannel shirt and I'm making it a specific size and I know it needs to finish at that size, then I will pre-wash my flannel. If it's going to be a dog bed like this and I'm just stuffing it with polyester fiberfill, or I'm putting a pillow form into it, if it shrinks the tiniest amount, I'm probably not even going to notice. So for this project in particular, I probably would not have pre-washed my fabric, no matter what kind of fabric it was that I bought. So you kind of just have to take your fabric and your project into consideration and then make your pre-washing decision.
Make your decision then. Let's see. I'm coming at another corner, so I got to do another diagonal stitch.
Yep.
I think flannel is a great fabric for this project because it's cuddly. You want a nice one. You probably wouldn't want to use fleece though, would you, Ashley? That's a little difficult, kind of thick to sew into a dog bed, I'd say.
What is? Sorry.
Like fleece.
Yes, fleece is, I guess when I was doing this, I just wanted something that was really easily washable. Also, my dog shed a lot, so I feel like fleece, it just, like, the hair just sticks to it. So I didn't really want fleece or minky or something that is really staticky. So that's why I went with flannel and cotton. But yet you could use fleece if you wanted to.
That's another thing to note
All right,
about this
so
project is since I'm stuffing mine with the polyfill, so I'll grab it up here, I cannot unstitch my pillow and wash this inner flannel fabric. So it probably, if you have a smelly dog or if you really want to like wash this, it's probably a better idea to make it with the pillow form so you can take the pillow form out and wash the case and maybe even the pillow separately. Wouldn't you say so, Ashley?
Yes, absolutely. But I will give you, so once I show you how mine's coming together, so this is, I've hemmed one side, I'm working on hemming the other side, and I'll show you how it goes together for if you're going to insert a pillow form, but you can still use this same technique. Stuff it with polyester fiber fill instead, and then rather than having to sew everything completely like you're doing, which is a perfect way to do it too, I'm going to show you a way that you can sort of temporarily close this. So if you needed to, you could take all the fiber fill out, wash it, and then restuff it. So there's always that option if you need to wash it.
Yes. We have a question in the chat from Crystal who asked, how long are the free patterns you have linked here going to be for free? So we currently don't have a takedown date, so by all means, download and share with your friends. Send them to the Handmade for the Holidays pattern. Perhaps after Christmas, we might close it, but currently right now, we don't have any plan to close the pattern. So go get some and make the dog bed, make the pajama pants, make a makeup brush holder, make them all, and send us pictures of them. We would love to see them. All right, Ashley, I'm sewing
a follow-up
in.
question on that though, real quick, because I know even though they aren't going to remain as free downloads, these videos do still remain on the site though, correct?
Yes. So they're available on the website all the time as well, but you can get to them through there, look through the chat. I mean, not through the chat, through the search bar, and you should be able to find them anytime anyway. Okay, question for you, Ashley. I have sewn around,
Yes.
I didn't cut on the end here, so it's still connected at the bottom. I've sewn around, I've sewn a little bit in. Should I sew along or just leave this connected on the bottom here? Would you recommend sewing it to make it tighter or just save on time? You can just leave it connected. You don't have to sew the fabric on the end here.
You don't need to sew it at all. If you want to, you can. All it's really doing is taking a 1/2 inch away from your project. So you don't have to, but so if I'm gonna visual here, if this is what yours looks like on a much smaller scale, obviously this is the edge that you have not sewn. You've sewn up here, all the way across the top and just a little ways into this side. This is your opening that you're going to leave so you can stuff it. Stop here, go ahead and do a back stitch, then come all the way down to a few inches in front of your corner, start, and then stitch off the edge. That way, like I mentioned before, you have all 4 of your corners stitched. You don't have to worry about trying to then, turn the corner inside out or right side out when you're stuffing it. Yes. So go ahead and stop there, leave that open, and stitch. There.
All right, I'm doing that now. I'm gonna be stitching. What have you been making for the holidays, Ashley? Have you had any projects coming up, or are you planning on making some more handmade gifts? Do you like to sew anything special at this time of year?
I do, but I sometimes find that I put off a lot of projects that I'm like, oh, I have time to finish that later. And then about this time, I realize that I have a bunch left that I still need to finish. But another fun project that we actually are doing right now, but on our sister site, is our table runner, paper piecing table runner. So yes. I made that, and I'm actually making a few more of those blocks, and I'm going to turn them into little placemats and little trivets and things and use those as some gifts. So that's a fun option. Doing some stockings actually in a couple days on the Facebook page, the National Sewing Circle Facebook page. So if you want to make some stockings in a couple days with me, tune into that.
Ooh, we just actually had this question, what we're talking about. Thank you for your question, Teresa, asking what we are working on for our handmade holiday gifts. I usually make stockings every year. I'm not this year because I've pretty much given everybody in my life a stocking, so I don't think I'll make them another one. But I have a current project. I tried to make one, and it was an absolute disaster, but it was because I was trying to do it with minimal sewing. If you've ever seen like what a Christmas gnome or Christmas elves look like, they're really trendy right now, like the Scandinavian ones. They usually have a tall fleece hat, and they have some beard going on, and they're like a little body. You can make them out of socks. I tried to make one of those, and it was a mess. Maybe I'll try again. My problem was, what I will say is I got a little lazy, and for the beard I was using polyfill and just kind of gluing it on, and it was super messy. So if you're gonna make a Christmas gnome, I do recommend buying some faux fur for a real beard, because it'll turn into a mess like mine. If I had a picture, I'd show you and we'd all have a good laugh, but I do not. Teresa has another question asking about the table runner. So do you want to talk a little more about the table runner and where people can find it, Ashley?
Yes, and then in a minute I can scamper behind me because it's on the shelf right there, and I can grab it and show you if you want. But so this is, it's a paper pieced pattern, and it is our 12 days of paper piecing. So there's 12 blocks, and they're all paper pieced, and you can put them together into a fun table runner.
Yes, and so you can find that. You can go to our Facebook page for National Quilter Circle, our sister site, not National Sewing Circle. Or actually, I can have somebody in the studio, if Jessica, lovely Jessica, our assistant, would love to drop the link into the chat. That would be super great. But the links are all posted there. We're posting about it every day on National Quilter Circle, and a whole bunch of people are making the table runner. So we would love if you would join us. All right, I'm ready to stuff my pillow, I think. She's gonna run and grab it quick. This machine.
Oh, I got it. I'm back.
Okay.
And then block 3 that just came out today is the candle. Where are we at? Right here. So there are 12 fun blocks. You put them all together into a really fun table runner. So
yes,
definitely can make that for them.
And it's super good for people who are just starting quilting, wouldn't you say? Because it's paper piecing, which is a little different than just doing a regular quilt.
Yes, and there's also, I mean, I think people shy away from paper piecing because it seems a little bit more intimidating because you have to follow the lines of the paper, and it can seem tricky, but we did a full tutorial on that as well. So if you've never done it, this is definitely a doable project. The blocks do get progressively harder. We have 4 of them that are easy, 4 that are intermediate, and 4 that are more advanced. So obviously you can work your way through them. You'll learn a lot during the first 4. So all those skills you learn will help you on the last 4. But then you can always just sort of choose your favorites too. If you like maybe just the Christmas ornaments, you can make just 12 ornaments and put all those together. So there's fun options too if you aren't, you know, wanting to make the whole, all 12 of them.
Yeah, you can mix and match, which is super fun. Right, I'm pulling my pillow inside out.
All right, well, while you are doing that, if you are doing the part where you're going to be making your cover to cover your pillow form, you have your 1 square that is 1 inch bigger than your pillow form, so that accounts for our seam allowances. And then you have your 2 rectangles that are going to become the back, and you have hemmed 1 long edge of both of those, which I have here. And now you need to layer them right sides together, and you need to essentially turn these 2 rectangles into a square. And by doing that, I mean you're going to layer, and I'll hold this up in just a sec so you can see it, but right sides together, your little rectangles over your square with the hemmed edges in the middle. So I can put my other piece on here, and you can see I have now the right sides together with the square in the background. All the edges line up all the way around, and my 2 hemmed edges overlap here in the middle. And now I'm essentially at the same part where you were, where we're just going to sew this together, only rather than having to leave an opening like you did, we can actually sew the entire perimeter of this because our opening is now right here in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and pin mine together, and then I can just stitch the whole perimeter. And I'm still going to do that same diagonal stitch in all of my corners like you did with yours. That way I can have that, be able to push out those corners nicely when I turn it right side out.
I'm stuffing my pillow now, which always is, I feel like I make a lot of projects where I need to stuff them. I've made a lot of pillows in my day out of old t-shirts. I love to make pillows out of old t-shirts, and I like to make little pillows that are shaped like letters. I made some of those as Christmas gifts too. But I feel like the stuffing, you can stuff it so much and you never feel like it's enough. So I have more of this polyfill, but it's not in here with me. Hopefully this will fit the whole pillow for now.
That is one thing. I have some stuffing tips for polyfiber
fill.
So
give me your stuffing tips.
Stuffing. Yeah, so I feel like one thing that is, it's sort of hard to resist doing it, but to just grab a big handful of it and just shove it in the pillow, it seems like that would be the easiest, quickest way to stuff it. But you actually want to take small handfuls and put little bits in at a time. Otherwise, you're going to find that your end result is going to be really clumped up, and you might have, you know, one big stuff section here and then a little bit of a a wool and then another big part of stuffing. So as long as you're putting it in like little handfuls at a time, it more evenly distributes throughout the whole pillow. So I think you'll find you like the way it looks better at the end if you do it that way.
Well, good. That is what I'm doing. I was feeling self-conscious about it, wondering if people were thinking that I was being too meticulous and taking too much time putting tiny handfuls of polyfill into my pillow. But it's
the perfect way to do it. So
Sometimes
I really, back to your gnome, because I don't know what it looks like, and I'm gonna have to Google this, and I definitely want pictures. But just because you mentioned using it as the beard, so you can buy batting, right? So batting for quilts, and they make that in a bunch of different types. So there is cotton, there's poly, there's bamboo, there's silk, there's all different kinds. But they actually make something called a craft poly, which it doesn't have any of the scrim. It doesn't really stay together as well as other battings. It's 100% polyester, but they actually even have a picture on the bag, on the packaging of it, of how you can use it to make it into a wig and a beard and things like that. So for future reference, buy some poly craft batting and use that to make wigs and beards and all those kind of things.
Oh, Donna says that she made 2 of the gnomes this year and they are adorable. They are indeed adorable, just not when I make them. I'm sure yours turned out a lot better than mine.
I need pictures. I need to see what these look like because I have never heard of them.
I will send you some. I think my downfall was I save old jeans like when I grow out of them or don't use them because I can't like bear throwing away some perfectly good denim, which is not even perfectly good, but in my mind I'm like, oh, I can sew this into something. And I was making the hats instead of out of fleece and just like buying nice fabric for it. I'm like, I'm gonna make them little jean hats. And it really was not friendly enough or forgiving enough to make the hat in the hurry that I was trying to do it. So maybe if I started with the correct materials, I could make a better gnome. Oh, Donna is asking, how can she share pictures? You can't put them in the chat here, but if you post it on our Facebook group or tag #share NSC on our Instagram, we'll be able to see it. So go to one of our social media channels and for sure share that picture.
Maybe that'll be one of our videos in the future is I'm gonna figure out how to make these and then we'll show everybody how to make them too. And then you can make another one, a redemption gnome.
A redemption gnome, yes, I do definitely need to make a redemption gnome. You know, polyfill goes a long way. I underestimated it.
It does.
Although it does leave lots of little trails all over. After this, I'm gonna be covered in polyfill. I matched my pillow too. That was unintended.
That's always a good thing to have on hand when you are using, even with this project in general, because you mentioned at the very beginning that flannel can ravel and you were cutting off all those little raveling flannel bits, whether you're using the polyfill or not, just having a lint roller on hand in your sewing room at all times is really a good thing to have to sort of keep up on those messes as they occur rather than like I like to do, let my mess build and then clean it up once a week or so.
Betty has a question about the patterns, and when you click to enter the patterns, she says it just says sign up for a premium membership, which is on the right side. You'll see 2 halves of the screen, and on the left there's going to be a color blocked section with a download now button where you can download the full video pattern. So if you look on the left of your screen on that same page, you'll be able to download the video. All right, continuing to stuff.
All right, you're continuing to stuff. I am on these 45-degree turns you're going to make in the corners, and then I'll be able to clip the corners, which also helps to reduce some of the bulk, and then turn it right side out. So almost done here. And so with mine, I'm not doing any kind of back stitching. I believe you had to do back stitching at yours because you had to leave that opening. Mine, I just went ahead and overlapped my beginning and my end. So that just sort of did the little back stitch for me. And then here is my corner. So you can see I came up one side. I just did, rather than a sharp 90-degree turn, just did that little diagonal stitch and then continued on the other way. And now when I bring my scissors in to clip my corners, I can get even closer to that seam, to that stitching line, because it's going in the same direction as that little stitch that I did. And I can go ahead and clip those corners off, which will just allow me to better turn this right side out and push those corners out. If you're using even thicker fabric, so like that polar fleece or a minky or something like that, you may want to clip your corners twice So this would be the first way, coming right across here. And then the second way would be to sort of angle down into the corner like this on both sides. And that is going to be like maximum bulk reduction in your corners. So that would be clipping it twice, and that's just really kind of angling down into the corner. So just once is fine if you're using cotton or flannel, but I would go twice if you're using something much thicker.
I feel like I'm being very meticulous with the stuffing. I want it to be very comfortable. I'm making this dog
And you
bed
know
for
you're
a
not
puppy
going to lay
labradoodle.
on it and ruin it.
What? They're
So
gonna
you know
play
your
with
dog
it.
is just going to lay on it and root around in
It's
there
true.
and enjoy it regardless.
Well, it'll be loved up. There you go.
Okay. So while you're continuing to stuff yours, mine, I've clipped all my corners. I can now turn it right side out through this hemmed opening that we have. So it should be very easy to just turn this right side out like so. Use your finger, or if you're using your poly fiber fill, it usually comes with a push stick. You can use that to turn your corners. I like to put my thumb in the corner, then grip it with my pointer finger, and then just push it out with my pointer finger. So it makes it really quick and easy way to flip those corners out. So you just want to turn it right side out. And then at this step, you've essentially just made a cover for your pillow form. So you would be inserting your pillow form into the square. So you would do it in through the back, and you can see with the overlapping back, once you get your pillow in, they sort of overlap back over themselves and close. If you get to this point and you decide, I don't want to use the pillow form, or maybe I measured wrong, it doesn't fit my pillow form, you can still stuff it at this stage and do the same stuffing technique that Lily is doing now. Go ahead and stuff this in, and then you just need to close this somehow. And so we're actually going to talk a little bit about Velcro later on, because that's how we're going to attach the other part to our bed. But you can do the same thing here. You can add Velcro. You could even I would say Velcro would be the best way to do it, but it's called sticky back Velcro, and you can just put a couple of them, maybe 2 or 3 of them along here, and then that would secure this down too, so you can stuff it.
We have some sticky back Velcro if we want to switch back to me and maybe see this. I got squares, and they come in ovals, they come in squares, all different shapes. These are just little ones. Very handy for all sorts of things, not just sewing projects, but organizational things at home as well.
Yes.
Oh,
definitely, I like the sew-in, or the sticky back Velcro compared to the sew-in, just because while it is sew-in and you can sew through it, I feel like sometimes you get more stitch issues and
oh, we have a green and frozen Ashley, and we're back to me. I guess I will fill in while we wait for Ashley to come back. We're having some technical issues as I continue to stuff this pillow. You can ask some more questions in the chat, send us some comments, although I'm going to be lost without her after I sew this final stitch onto here. Crystal says she is making knot pillows, baked goods, and hard lotion bars for gifts this year. Any tips for the knot pillows? You've found lots of DIYs. I do not, but hopefully Ashley does if we can get her back. As I continue to stuff, I wish I was sewing. I'm trying to get all this polyfill in here before I sew it up. Sometimes when I'm stuffing with polyfill, I like to use a pencil, or like Ashley said, she uses her pointer finger when she opens a pillow back up and just puts it in there to get the corners out. If it's a really large project, or I feel like I have too thick of a finger in like a small project, a small pillow, I'll use a pencil, the eraser side, not the pointy side, and try and get it in there. As I mentioned before, we are making the dog bed project from our Handmade from the Holidays series. And you can download the video tutorial for this project and several other projects by clicking the banner in the chat below. So feel free to do that. Ask us, or ask me, any questions about the projects, and I will try to answer them. I'm nearly done with my stuffing here. One thing about stuffing with polyfill, though, as Ashley mentioned before, you can get lumps in here. So I'm trying to do little pieces and then also going back in and spreading out the polyfill so that it doesn't look lumpy. A dog is going to be sitting on it, and it's probably not going to be that important, and or the dog won't really care about it that much, but we might as well make it nice if we're making it. We had to wait quite a long time in line to get this fabric, this flannel. Only needed a little bit, but this time of year I feel like is very busy at Joann Fabrics, and we had to take a number and wait, which is by no means a problem for me because Christmas time at Joann doesn't just mean nice fabrics, it means they have all sorts of fun crafty stuff out there and decorations, and I love looking at all of their seasonal holiday things and spending money that I probably shouldn't be. But Joann always has coupons, right? So not always a problem. Okay, this is my last bit of polyfill. I'm gonna do it on my own, lost without Ashley. I've got quite a bit on here, so I'm gonna try and dust a little bit of this off. I'm probably gonna need to pin this because it's a little fatter, it'll be harder to get through. I have one of these. Does anybody have an old pin cushion that, well, they make new ones now. I actually just saw some in Joann, but I say old because this is my grandma's and she's had it forever. These little pin cushions that look like tomatoes. A lot of people like to make their own pin cushions these days, but I can't bring myself to not use this one. It also has that handy little strawberry for sharpening your pins in. It's got, I'm not sure, I think it's sand or some kind of gritty material in there. All right, gonna pin my pillow. I have made quite a few pillows in my day, so not a problem for me. Although I trimmed my flannel and I'm seeing that I have a little bit of fray here. We'll see if we can get Ashley coming back in. I'm waiting for the studio to get the technical problem worked out, but at least you can see me finish up this little chunk of flannel pillow. If anybody would like to share in the chat what they are making for the holidays, I'd love to hear it, read it aloud. Anything else you would like to add? Let's see. Donna asks, will you hand sew it closed or will you machine sew it closed? I'm going to attempt machine sewing it closed. I've done this with a variety of pillows before. This sewing machine has a nice attachment where you can add on some extra space to sew. My sewing machine at home does not, and I do tend to just kind of cram projects through it so that it's a little easier for me. I am miserable at hand sewing. I don't know, I've never had enough patience to do a good chunk of hand sewing. If I sewed a smaller opening in here, maybe I would have hand sewed it, but I do have a fair amount of room because I wanted to make sure I got all the polyfill stuffing in there. All right. Okay, see how this goes. Oh, they got a close-up on me too, so I better not make any mistakes. I'm sure if Ashley were here, she'd be rolling her eyes at me, but we're gonna make it happen. Okay, got my machine on the lowest setting here. I don't have a pedal, so I'm pressing my start-stop button. I actually also, this is just, I'm gonna do a back stitch here because we're sewing over a lot of volume and I wanna make sure that it holds all my stuffing in. So there we go. And we're gonna go along and sew this pillow through the machine. We're gonna make it happen. Very slowly. I know it probably doesn't look the most exciting, but I want to make sure that I get it right here. Go a little faster now that I'm gaining some confidence. Oh, I heard a ding. We might have Ashley back. Ashley, can you hear me? Or was that just a false alarm on my end? Oh, I hear an Ashley. Ashley, can you hear me? No, we're still waiting on it, but that's a good sign. All right.
She came back.
I think she's back. Can you hear me? I see you.
I'm not sure what entirely happened there, but we've got a new setup and hopefully you can hear me now.
I can hear you now and I can see you now. So welcome back. While you were gone, I crammed this pillow through the sewing machine to sew it closed.
Perfect. Okay, so your pillow is done. Mine, I'm just gonna go ahead and stuff mine. And then we can talk about how you do the actual sides of the bed, the rest of what makes the bed like super comfy for your animal.
All right.
Did we have any questions while I was away? I feel like I was gone forever.
We did have one question that I could not answer, which was Crystal is making knot pillows for one of her handmade Christmas gifts, and she was wondering if you had any tips for the knot pillows. She's found lots of DIYs on it, but just was wondering if you had any tips or tricks or have ever made knot pillows.
So I have not made a knot pillow, but I have seen them made. And so the ones that I have seen, I'm not sure if this is similar to how you're doing it, is where you actually make a long tube out of an easy to stuff kind of fabric, usually like a jersey knit or something, and then actually sew those ends and then tie them into your knot. So really, I would just say you want to make sure that you are using a fabric that is easy to work with in terms of tying your knot. So again, like a knit fabric, some sort of polyester blend of your fabric is going to be a lot easier to work with than using 100% cotton. So that would be my main suggestions for a knot pillow.
All right. I've got my pillow sewn closed. It's probably a little lumpier than I would have liked, but I mean, like I said, it's for a dog bed. It'll be fine. But it's not too bad. I followed Ashley's very professional technique of using little handfuls. Oh, it looks nice on camera. I am actually pretty satisfied with it. What should I do with my other chunk of flannel that I have ready?
All right, you need to decide how high you want the walls of your dog bed to be. So if this is going to be our dog bed, your walls are going to be what is going to go around the perimeter of your dog bed. So decide, and you can just sort of guesstimate a number too, how tall you want them to be. So one way that you can make this easier is to get a ruler and measure how tall your pillow is. So mine is like 3 inches tall. So then I'd want the walls of my bed to probably be at least 3 to 4 inches taller than that. And that's the number you want to get to. So how tall is your pillow?
Let's see. I've got, I'd say about a 6.5 inches tall pillow. So I'm probably going to aim for a 9-inch or like a 10-inch ring around it here. Does that seem right?
Okay. Yeah. So you're going to take that measurement, your 9 or 10 inch, whatever you decide on, and you're going to double that and then add 1. So doubling it is so that way you can actually sew 2 pieces together and have 2 sides to your side. And then the +1 is accounting for our seam allowance. So a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you have to do your math. Take your number, double it, and then add 1.
Okay. I have a question. So this is essentially a tube that's going around the dog bed, correct? Do we want to do this all in one, or should I piece some chunks together? What would you recommend?
So you need enough of a tube, and you want one continuous tube, but you're going to have to piece it together unless you're making a tiny little one like I am here. You're inevitably going to have to piece it together. So you're going to take take the perimeter of your pillow. So I don't remember what your side, how big yours is, but add all 4 sides together. Take that number, add 1 inch to that, so you have your seam allowance, and then that's how long of a tube you need to make. So if that's anything longer than 42 inches or whatever your width of fabric is, then you're going to need to piece together multiple of those.
Okay. I'm cutting awkwardly with my left hand because I'm just trying to mark. I should have some kind of marking tool in here, which brings up another question from me, Ashley. Do you have any preference in marking tools, or do you even like to mark your fabric at all, or what would you recommend for any sort of project, any marking tools?
So I definitely have a wide variety of marking tools, but the ones I go to most are not your traditional fabric or craft marking. So this is just a standard mechanical pencil, and I will use this on pretty much anything that I'm marking that I don't have to worry about whether that mark is going to be seen. If it's something where I'm worried that I have to mark on the right side of my fabric, or I know that I'm going to want to remove that mark at any time, I do lots of marks using just straight pins. So whatever it is I'm marking, say I need to mark like on this piece of fabric that I need to, draw a line across here, I'm going to be doing that. I would actually just put a pin in and make a mark using a pin. That way I know it's 100% removable. I don't have to worry about washing it away. And you generally always have pins around you if you're sewing. So that's an easy way to do some marking.
Yeah. I like to use a pencil myself too. I find that works for me. I'm running out of room here for all of the flannel that I have. Use my trusty rotary cutter here. Ashley is actually the one who taught me how to use rotary cutters properly. I was intimidated by them. I thought they were only for quilters, but I have found that they come in handy a lot more than scissors actually for a lot of sewing projects.
Yes, that's definitely something, even if I'm cutting out, say, like a dress pattern or skirt pattern, if I have the ability to lay it flat on my mat and use my rotary cutter to cut it out, I will definitely do that. I want to backtrack with just one more little stuffing tip real quick, because I'm sort of at this point. But so if you have your little pillow, and so say you've made your square pillow cover and you have your pillow form in it exactly, which we're going to pretend that that's what's in mine. But sometimes when you put your pillow form in your pillow, you have sort of these dead corners, like where the pillow form doesn't get all the way into the corner, which is probably fine on a dog bed. But say you're going to make a pillow for, you know, the couch or something. Even once you have your pillow form in, just take a little handful of this fiberfill and push it into the corner on top of your pillow form to just sort of finish off the corner and make sure you stuff all the way into the corner. So regardless of whether you use all poly fiberfill or you use your pillow form, make sure you have just a couple handfuls of it to push into the corners.
All right. And I am flipping my fabric inside out here to sew on. I'm going to be putting 2 tubes together. Question about that. Should I sew the tubes separately, or should I stitch each front and back side together and then sew it all as one big tube, or how should I go about doing this?
I think it's much easier if you're just working with one big long tube, because we're going to be sewing this strips of fabric into a tube and then actually stuffing it. So it's a lot easier to just stuff one long tube as opposed to trying to stuff multiple and then assemble multiple. So there's a couple different ways to do what the step you're at, which you are going to do it one way because you have your 2 pieces that you are stitching together, correct?
Yep.
To make your tube?
Yep.
And so mine is going to be a little bit different just because mine is much smaller, so my walls didn't need to be as tall. So I am actually going to take just one and I'm going to fold it in half and then just stitch right along this edge and have a fold here. So you can do that if you have a bunch of fabric that you can use, or if you're just making a smaller one like I am here.
All right. And I have a chunk.
So I'm just putting my right side together. I'm just going to put my right sides together, go ahead and put some pins in, and then I'm going to go ahead and stitch all the way from one side all the way down to the other. You don't have to do any kind of back stitching. We're going to be finishing these edges off a little bit differently. So you don't have to back stitch, and you don't have to worry about finishing these edges before you stitch. Just go ahead and put them right sides together and stitch. So whether you're folding in half or you're putting 2 long strips together, just go ahead and stitch right from one side down to the other.
I have to share that I had a boo-boo when I was talking about you teaching me about the rotary cutter. I just unfolded this piece of flannel and I happened to have a hole in it from the rotary cutter. Don't know when that happened. So Ashley, say you were making this project and you accidentally cut a hole in your tubing. How would you go about remedying that?
So it depends on how quick of a fix you want. So if you have enough fabric and you want to cut that off and, say your hole is like right here, then just cut this chunk off and then, redo it. Or just because it would be a really fun, conversation starter and a story, I would totally put a patch on it, like, especially since it's a dog bed. Yeah. If you could just cut like from another piece of fabric, like a little dog bone or something, and just patch it, like that's probably what I would do. And then I would tell everybody why I patched it, because I cut a hole in it.
Could you also fold the fabric over like I'm showing here and sew over it and have it look like a little frankenfold of stitched fabric, so it would just have like a little pucker right there and just be sewn together?
You could absolutely do that, and especially on a project like this so when we get to it, we're going to stuff it, and then we're going to have a side of your side that actually attaches to your pillow, and you can just make it to where that little imperfection is along one of those edges, and you can hide it that way. So there's definitely multiple ways to hide and fix this issue if anybody else did this as well.
I doubt anybody else did this, but if you do, you know how to fix it now. We do have another question in the chat from Crystal talking about the knot pillows again. And since we were talking about stuffing pillows in general, and I just stuffed a pillow full of polyfiber fill, she asked if you had any pillow stuffing tips for the knot pillows. I asked this because some of my family, as well as myself, are fond of buckwheat hull stuffed pillows, which I am too. I like to use those. They're good for my neck. So do you have any tips on stuffing, maybe not polyfill, stuffing with buckwheat, Ashley, or how to stuff a knot pillow?
I don't know that I've ever stuffed something with the buckwheat. I usually use the polyfiber fill.
Yeah.
I mean, I have also stuffed things with like scraps of fabric and things like that. So I really feel like the biggest thing is just making sure that everything is evenly distributed. So whether that's, you know, the small handfuls, using those push sticks that generally come with any kind of stuffing to make sure that it's all evenly distributed in there. But I think I'm going to have to brush up on the different types of stuffing options. I usually just go with the polyfiber fill.
Now you can know stuff with buckwheat. I've never stuffed with buckwheat, but I do own a buckwheat hull pillow. I got it for Christmas last year. It was a great gift.
Gonna have to get one. I'm gonna have to look up that, and I'm gonna have to look up these gnomes. I have a lot of things I need to look up after this.
You do? Oh my gosh, see, I have it on the other side here too, so I'm gonna sew over this. Let's see. Donna says she recommends zigzagging over the cut, which might be a good idea.
Yes, that would be a good idea too. Especially, I would say the zigzag would be, so if you did the zigzag option, that could be you just butt those two edges up where you cut, and then you zigzag over, or use like an edge joining stitch or something like that. That would definitely bring those together. The only thing I would worry about with that is, at least if you fold it right sides together and do a straight stitch, you have a little bit of extra within that seam allowance you've just created. So if, you know, say your dog is leaning up on that side, if there's any stress put on that little stitched area that you need to do, that might be the sturdier option, is that straight stitch with the two right sides together.
I always want to pull out my thread a little bit because it makes me nervous when it's short. You don't really have to do that, but I always do that. Okay, now we're back after stitching up. I got my little pucker in my foot. I'm gonna make sure I have no other cuts in here. We do have about 5 minutes left of this live event, so if you have any more questions, please ask them in chat and we would love to answer them. And if you would like to find this full dog bed tutorial, you can click on the little banner below the chat and download the full video, as well as some other projects. We got pajama pants, a makeup brush holder, and other great projects that you can make and give for the holidays.
So I'm just working on sewing my tube together. This is the longest part of stitching that you'll have to do, but it is pretty much the easiest part because it's just a straight stitch. I did not pin mine, so if you see when I'm stitching, I'm just going to align with right sides together, sort of readjust or make sure that, you know, the first 5 or 6 inches within where I'm stitching is lined up, sort of make any adjustment I need to, and then stitch, and then readjust and stitch. So that way I didn't have to pin everything first.
As I'm lining up my fabric here, I'm reminded too of, this was a video that Ashley, I'm not actually sure if you shot it. I think you shoot them all because I think you have all of the sewing tips. But when you're lining up your fabric, I'm probably not going to be able to do it super well on camera here because I'll get nervous. But when you have uneven fabric, it's always super hard to line it up. And this little tip of using your fingernails to scrunch the fabric up, if you see that there, you can get your fabric aligned little by little by running your fingernails over it and pulling it up to the edge there so you can get a perfect alignment. Just a little tip.
Yes, I would like to claim that, but it wasn't fingernails, and so that's how I remember that she did that video. But yeah, very, very great tip.
All right, lining up
Into my tube, and I'm just stitching off the edge. Right, like so. How is is your tube coming along?
It's going good. I'm actually starting the sewing of the actual tube now that I've run over and made sure that I don't have any additional cuts in my fabric. So I'm gonna go and start putting this together. I didn't pin this one, and now that it's bunching up a little bit, it's bothering me. But we will manage.
Perfect. Well, while you're sewing, I'm turning mine right side out. So it should be pretty easy because it's a pretty wide turn right side out. And just get it nice and flat.
Yeah, this is a fairly...
Once you have it right side out.
Oh, you can continue.
Once you have it right side out, we're going to do some more stuffing. So if you weren't tired of stuffing before, we're going to do some more stuffing now. Again, you can't obviously use a pillow form for this. You're going to need to use your polyfiber fill. It's a much thinner tube than, compared to your pillows. So same thing, just take your small handfuls and you want to stuff it. So for me, this is how long my tube is. It's not terribly long, especially in terms of like how long Lily's is going to be because her bed's much bigger, but you want to stuff sort of half at a time. So if you have to hold it up like this, you can sort of see where half is. You're going to stuff from one side down to about half, and then go ahead and stuff the other side down to about half, rather than trying to, push all of this stuffing all the way through from one end. Make it a little bit easier and just go about halfway.
All right. And now I have sewn up part of my tubing. I still have a little bit to go, and I will need to stuff the tubing. But we actually, Ashley, are out of time. So do you have any closing tips or comments about the dog bed, or anything you would like to recommend to our viewers?
Yes, just so they don't think that we're cheating them. You can see this full tutorial, so you'll see how to finish up the edges of these tubes, how to join the two ends together, and then how to put the sides on your pillow to actually complete the dog bed. But we wanted to save something for you to watch in that full tutorial. So make sure that you download that and watch it, and then make your finished dog bed. And that should give you all the tips that you need to finish it off.
Yes, so as Ashley mentioned, you can just click the banner below this chat and find the link for the dog bed, or maybe a link to another project that you would like to make in our Handmade for the Holidays series. Sorry about our little technical glitch there in which Ashley went green, but we got her back. We got her back to give us some more tips on the dog bed and some closing comments, and I hope you make it. I hope maybe you make something else from the Handmade from the Holidays, or if it's not from us, I do hope you make something homemade for your family members or loved ones this Christmas, holiday season, whatever you're celebrating. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being patient with us. And we will see you next month for another live NSC Q&A. So thank you and goodbye.